Before we get going on this series, I have to say, as always, our sponsors who support us and allow us to do these conferences, Mitsubishi Electric, helping you get to net zero energy through air source heat pump systems all the way for like variable refrigerant on multifamily construction. We've got our friends at Enertech who've got GeoComfort, Hydron, they've got geothermal systems, they've got air source radiant systems. You got to go check them out under those two names. We've got our friends at Water Furnace who have been around a very long time, delivering some of the best top-notch ground source heat pump systems out there, geothermal systems for all types of projects. And then we've got our friends Build Equinox, CERV. You're talking about smart ventilation systems that detect poor air quality and ventilate only as needed to save energy. And then we've got our friends at Consumers Energy and DTE Energy, who are both pushing different unique sustainability goals, electrification goals, and all of that. So make sure to check them out before you do a project. There may be some incentives if you're working in Michigan. And also for these last 3 years, we could not do it without all of our planning partners who allow us, who are working tirelessly behind the scenes to make these sessions happen. We've got John Freeman, who's on right now. Say hi, John, from the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association. We've got David Gard, who's on right now. Say hi, Dave, from
Thanks,
Michigan.
Brett. Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, from Michigan Energy Efficiency Contractors Association. We've got our former chair and chair of our education committee, Dave Dye. Say hi, Dave, if you're out there.
Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, DFD Architecture. We've got Larry Coughlin with the Michigan Geothermal Energy Association. Say hi out there, Larry.
I remember World Geothermal Day is October 17th, coming up soon.
There you go. And we've got Michael Clement, who couldn't join us, Architectural Resource. He's so busy designing net zero homes that he could just never join us. So it's amazing. And then we've got our new partner this year, Illinois Green Alliance. And then Ashley, are you out there to say hi?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and get rolling. So this is the third session of our residential net zero energy conference. We've been doing this for 3 years now. We were about a year ago, we did our second annual one, all virtually. We're staying virtual to keep you safe. And so this year we broke it up across 3 sessions, and we've got the other 2 recorded if you want to check them out. We've got we've got an existing housing homeowner session from March that we did. And then we had a new construction homeowner session that we did on June 30th. So this one's going to be focused around multifamily housing and some of the challenges and opportunities there. Again, these courses are approved for 2 hours in continuing education units, as well as the energy pathway under our certified green home professional designation, and AIA health, welfare, and safety, which may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. So again, welcome everyone to Taking Control of Your Energy Future, Zero Energy Multifamily. We've got some awesome speakers lined up. Peter Scornia, Kamina Brooks, Timothy McDonald, and virtually Matt Hollander. He could not make it in person today, so we have pre-recorded him for this session. And we're going to be going in this order throughout the session, asking some specific questions and then getting to your questions. So I'm going to have our speakers introduce themselves. And so Peter, please do take it away.
Thank you, Brett. My name is Peter Scornia. I'm with the Zani Building Company. We're based in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and a project that we just recently finished. Brett, thanks so much on your slide. There is a project we just finished in Grand Rapids called Bradford Station. Brett, are you running the slides? Can you jump to the next one?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Peter. Can everybody see my screen right now? If I do that?
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, perfect. Thank you. There you go.
Thank you. Yeah. So we are first and foremost a builder. I spend a lot of time doing these presentations, and I forget that I do have to do a little marketing for Design Building Company. And a couple of projects we've done recently, the Bradford Station, just mentioned, and then that we finished, and then 730 Leonard is a remodeling about 100-year-old building, also here in Grand Rapids. And, we've been focusing on going to all electric with our buildings and then tracking our greenhouse gas emissions for carbon neutrality.
Okay, great. Thanks, Peter. We're going to hand it off to our second speaker, Kamina Brooks. So take it away, Kamina.
Thanks, Brett. Hi, Kamina Brooks, Senior Project Manager with the Community Builders, or also known as TCB. And we are a mixed income housing and community developer. We also have a property management arm, as well as a community life arm, which provides wraparound services to our residents. We are headquartered in Boston, but we have regional offices throughout the East Coast and Midwest, including Chicago. And I operate out of the Chicago office. Excited to be here with the moderator, other panelists, and the guests today. I also want to mention that Sachin Anand and Tyler Hodges with DBHMS they're part of the design team for the project that I'll be talking about, Assemble Chicago, and they are in the audience to help answer questions during Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, Kamina, and I'll hand it off to you, Tim.
Sure. I don't have a slide. My intro will be really short. I'll save some time for some of the larger questions because that's when you'll get to see who we are. But quite simply, I'm an architect, developer, and builder, and president of a company called Onion Flats in Philadelphia. We now have a second office in Boston area, and we're focused on multifamily, affordable and market rate, passive house, and net zero energy buildings.
Hi, I'm Matt Hollander. I'm the president of Hollander Development Corporation. We're a multifamily developer based in Portage, Michigan, and Kalamazoo. And we've been developing affordable housing since 1979. We have over 40 years of experience, and we've developed over 4,000 homes. I'm also a lead AP, and I have a background in sustainability. So this topic is very important to me. And this is one of the areas where we try to do as much as we can to be innovative and cutting edge. So,
all right. Real quick here, let's hand it back to you, Peter, and we're going to have some specific questions for our teams here that we have lined up. So we're excited about that. And really, the first question is, kind of why are you doing this? Why is this important? Really, that's kind of what we want to get behind the big why here. So Peter, I'm going to hand it off to you to take us through that and answer that question. So thanks.
Thanks, Brett. For us, a big part of our business is following the triple bottom line of people, profit, and planet. And I think your question ties right into that. So for people, that's the people who live or work in and around our buildings. We want to be aware of what the built environment has on those people as occupants or as neighbors. And then also working to support the efforts to meet the local housing demand. And, lots of different groups involved in this. It's a big part of development in West Michigan now, as I think it is around the country. There's so many issues with housing, availability of housing. Brett, if I could ask you to flip forward one slide there. Thank you. And then supporting an urban lifestyle with walkable communities. We're fortunate in Grand Rapids. We've got a great bus system. We're becoming very walkable, increasing the density. My wife and I live in the city and just love being able to walk to do most of our grocery shopping and going out for restaurants and things. The second element of the triple bottom line is profit. We are a profitable company, or strive to be, and want to do that to make sure that we're paying all of our employees and our vendors a decent living wage, which ties right into the community. And finally, the planet, and so much of what we're talking about today. So with our focus on a sustainable design practice, just a few highlights on that. Improving the thermal envelope of our buildings, whether that's new construction or renovations. Second, renewable energy, eliminating the use of fossil fuels in the buildings. And again, on increasing urban density. And that can be very much incorporated in design, building the right size spaces, building up rather than out.
Great, thanks, Peter. And then we'll hand it off to you, Kamina. What why is this important to you and your group? Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, great. Thank you for the question. But let me start with a brief overview about the project Assemble Chicago, which was selected as part of the C40 Reinventing Cities competition. And for those that may not know, C40 is a network of megacities truly committed to addressing climate change. I think it was founded as 40 cities, but has since grown to 97 cities, each taking bold climate action. And Reinventing Cities is a global competition organized by C40 to drive carbon neutral and resilient urban regeneration. C40 cities identify underutilized land to seek developments that address energy efficiency, sustainable building materials, circular economy, and water and waste management. And Brett, if you next slide, please. And in Chicago, the city identified an underutilized city-owned lot or site for the C40 Reinventing Cities competition in downtown Chicago. The site is underutilized or unused parking garage and a sort of underutilized park. And the site's adjacent to public transit, as well as walking distance to employment opportunities, recreation, retail, cultural centers, and even the Chicago lakefront. And just next slide, I'll talk a bit about the project overview at the site. In response to the RFP, we proposed a 20-story mixed-use building with 207 mixed-income apartments that are affordable to moderate and low-income working households within a carbon neutral development. And then next, thank you. And as part of the competition, we were tasked with incorporating C40's climate challenges into our development. The challenges that C40 posed are around energy efficiency, addressing energy efficiency, low carbon, climate resiliency, ecological services, and even green jobs, water management, and innovative architecture. And some of our, I'll let you get to the slide one more. Yep, thank you. And some of our sustainable features to highlight within our development, the C40 or Assemble Chicago development, include limited glazing on our facade. Our window to wall ratio is 25%. We also introduced low carbon mixed concrete structure. We are using a newly developed low carbon mix designed with up to 30% less embodied carbon. We're also incorporating smart building technology, which meters energy usage and provides data to residents to influence their behaviors. And with property management, we will seek to incentivize residents around energy and water reduction. We are also incorporating efficient water systems, rainwater harvesting and rooftop storage for toilet flushing, highly efficient heat pump driven electric hot water heaters, and shower drain heat recovery. Also fresh air systems with hybrid natural ventilation mode as well. And then, sustainable transportation. Our building, like I mentioned, is adjacent to the CTA transit system or the L station, and we are not incorporating any parking on site. Residents will have to rely on public transit as well as walkability to the downtown jobs, schools, restaurants, and entertainment. And then lastly, renewable energy generation on and off-site solar PV arrays. And to answer Brett's question, why are we attempting to achieve these important sustainability goals? Not only just to meet the C40 challenges or the C40 goals, but also at this site in downtown, it's an important opportunity with the support of the city to really push the envelope on sustainable design and an all affordable mixed income development. As well, the sustainable features we will implement will improve the lives of occupants within this affordable housing development, as well as positively impact other communities through resources taken from the development's neighbor hub, which is a space that allows for meeting, event, and collaboration. And programs within that space will be focused on green technology, waste reduction, as well as community farming. And communities can take back that information into the other 77 communities in Chicago. It's also important that we reduce operational expenditure of the building and reduce tenants' energy usage, which in turn reduces their utility costs. And then lastly, implementing robust sustainability features into the building really exemplifies how developments can play a role in carbon reduction, as well as water and waste management. Thanks, Brett.
Yeah, thank you for taking us through that, your project, and giving us a little more detail there, Kamina. And Tim, I'm going to hand it off to you now to tell us a little bit more about the why behind your
project. It appears I can't share my screen. There we go. Just worked. Give me a second. All right. My answer to the question is pretty straightforward. It's the only responsible thing to do. And what do I mean by that? I mean that as an architect, the knowledge that buildings are responsible for almost half of all greenhouse gas emissions, and let that sink in, half, we don't have a chance in hell of solving the climate crisis if we don't solve it with buildings, period. And even though COP21, the Paris Climate Agreement, calls for essentially carbon neutral buildings by 2050, we don't even have that much time. This is an interesting graph by Ed Masria, who just drew a line from, let's say we had peak emissions in 2020 to zero in 2050. That would be 600 gigatons of CO2 we'd be emitting. That's almost twice what we have to emit. And so we've squandered so many years. We actually don't have until 2050. We've got less than 20 years to solve this. And what this means is carbon neutral buildings need to be standard by 2040. What does that mean? In my head, that means that buildings need to generate what they can, all they need on their own site, not so much through carbon offsets, because I think that can get really tricky, but literally generating everything the building needs. So, a typical row house like this has a roof that big to do all the work that it needs to do. And so how do you do that? Well, heating and cooling is more than half of the energy consumption. So what's the best heating and cooling system out there? It's a coat, a really good coat, a really tight and well-insulated coat. And that is the essence of Passive House, the Passive House building standard. It's a fabric-first approach to building. And it's the best tool that I know to radically reduce the amount of energy consumption that a building needs first. And that's what you got to do first before you talk about solar or anything else. And it's basically just really, really good building science principles that we don't want to talk about right now. I don't have enough time. And that's me.
Hey, thank you so much, Tim. And I'm glad you reminded everybody, because usually we kick these sessions off with a reminder on what net zero is, what it means. And so we did the last two, but I'm glad you brought up that it's, over the course of a year producing more energy than you use. That's what net zero is. And zero carbon is, of course, for those who are going after zero carbon, which is happening as well, is offsetting that with renewable energy credits. So thank you for just defining that. It's important to define that. And so now I'm going to hand it off to Matt Hollander here to kind of give us briefly his why on why this is important to his company and Hollander Development.
I thought about this question a little bit in advance, and I realized that if you showed up today and you're on a webinar about multifamily net zero ready construction, you probably already know the answers to why we might want to push high performance buildings and green construction. So simple answer: anthropogenic climate stabilization. That's all I got.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Matt, for keeping it brief here. So I'm gonna now turn it back over to Peter. And Peter, the question for you, as I'm pulling your slides up here, is what are the biggest challenges, and what did you do to help overcome those challenges, on your specific project, and then just in general with what what Bazzani's goals are?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Brett. And if I could ask you to move ahead with the slides, hold mine up. And as you're bringing that up, as far as biggest challenges, boy, right now this is true across the industry. Right now, our biggest challenge is labor and materials, and our overall supply chain is really messed up. And there's lots of reasons for that, but boy, as we look to the future, and issues of climate change are only going to make this worse. So there's a lot that we have to look for there in ways of solving that. But big picture, in regard to our discussion today, one of the biggest challenges we have are commonly held beliefs that we ran into when we started going into this. One, electric heat is inefficient. We had that issue in getting financing on projects, where the appraiser came back and devalued our building because we took the step to eliminate all fossil fuels from the project. Gave us a lower appraised value, which impacted our ability to get financing. And it ended up working that out, but there are a lot of those commonly held beliefs that are still out there. The second one is that heat pumps don't work in cold weather. Boy, with Brett's help on Bradford Station, we worked through those and ended up with a system that we've been very, very pleased with. And also that sustainable construction costs more. That in order to make an energy efficient building sustainably designed, you really have to pay a premium for it. And in some cases, that is certainly true. There are features that could be added in that are really, really out cutting edge, and looking at, and I don't want to imply that these cost more or not feasible, but some of the remarkable things, Kamina, that you showed on your building that you have done, and Tim, that some of the things that you have done, really, really great examples of ways that we can make sustainable construction the norm by showing people that this can get done. It does not need to cost more. We can incorporate these systems into our regular construction practices. A few technical issues that we ran into: efficient, cost-effective way to distribute and meter hot water. That's something that I feel as a builder and a developer, we haven't gotten right. We always struggle with where the water heater is going to go. Should we use a central boiler? Should we do net metering on that? And for us, that's one we still need to fix. We always seem to end up going back to regular electric water heaters that go in each individual unit. The second one is venting, getting air in and out of a building in an efficient way, in a way that minimizes disruption to fire ratings, and is architecturally pleasing. And the next one is technical issues around fire ratings in general. And then something that we've been working on is a connection for multifamily buildings of trying to get affordable renewable power. We're working with our local utility here on that. If a building gets to a certain size and has enough energy consumption, it gets us into a different price bracket for purchasing renewable power rather than generating our own on site. We can purchase it from the local utility. I think doing that on a number of projects helps reinforce with that local utility the need for renewable power and gets them in a mindset of adding to and increasing the percentage in our grid. But we still have an issue with that of not allowing a master meter with sub-meters on residential construction. So, and then the last one we run into is connections to investors who are interested in sustainable design. That finding people who want to make that decision to invest in projects where the developer has a sustainability as a main focus. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Peter. And Kamina, can you just tell us a little bit about some of your big challenges with this project and how you're looking to overcome them?
Yeah, and I will say that the project is early on in the process. We were selected as part of RFP, and there are likely, as we all know, to be many challenges ahead. But so I do not have a long list of challenges that we faced thus far, but I certainly know that there will be many challenges as we work through the next phase of the project. But one of the challenges for us as we responded to the RFP was managing through solar, and particular on-site solar. On a high-rise development, especially in a compact urban environment, you can only pack in but so much renewable generation on site. And there's typically just not enough space on site to offset the energy usage of the building. And we overcame the challenge by we actually identified another TCB development site called Oakwood Shores, which is about 4 miles south of Assemble Chicago. And the site has an expansive parking as well as rooftops. And we identified that site in particular for the all-site renewable rather than just completely buying out. And on site at Assemble Chicago, we will deliver about 57.5 kilowatts of solar array, and then can pick up an additional 650 kilowatt solar array at Oakwood Shores. And then, and initially the energy produced by these off-site solar arrays will support Assemble Chicago, but as the grid transitions to renewables, these arrays will offset energy use and operational carbon at Oakwood Shores. And then, an additional benefit at Oakwood Shores is the site will then have covered parking. Right now, there's parking lots that aren't covered, and putting the solar arrays will allow for covered parking as well as reduce the heat island effect. Together with the on-site that we're able to deliver at Assemble Chicago, as well as with Oakwood Shores, we can offset about 50% of the operational carbon for the project. So that's one of the challenges that we sort of work through during the design process. But like I mentioned, we're early on in the process, and there are certainly more challenges to come that we have a strong design team that will work through along the way.
Well, thank you, Kamina, and hopefully we'll learn a little bit more and be able to share lessons learned from the construction process of this project. And Tim, we'll hand it off to you now.
Okay. As this is opening up, I should say, Kamina, I was on a team that competed on that site, and while I'm not happy we lost, I'm certainly happy you guys won. Let's just put it that way, because it's a great project. My answer is very simple: getting to zero on a budget. I'm going to go rapid fire here because I'm going to show you a lot. Just hold on to your seats. Okay, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean you got to rethink everything. So the very fact that we are a vertically integrated company, we're the developer, the architect, the builder. We even have a green roof and solar company. We've calculated that cuts out about 15% of the costs to build a project. So I'm a huge fan of vertically integrating. You don't have to be the architect, developer, and builder, but maybe design build contracts. And we did that on this project. It's a 26-unit townhome development. But the other really important thing that we take on with every project, if we are to stay at these kinds of numbers, and at that time, this was comparable code-built construction, $150 a square foot, is that we have to not just rethink how we design buildings, but rethink how we make them. So we started a modular company around this time. These are designed to the Passive House standard. 3 of the 25 units were built this way. The other thing you've got to do, and it doesn't cost any money to do it, is to make it tight. 0.6 air changes per hour at 50 pascals is a Passive House. This was 0.49. These are those 3 houses. People that say you can't do green roofs and generate power, you should tell them no. So you've got to integrate solar. Don't think about solar as this additional cost. And you'll see what I mean by that in a second. This takes it to another level where this is a 25-unit apartment building, small units, all centralized systems, which I won't go into. But again, every project that we've done in the past years, we prefabricated it in some way. In this case, we panelized the envelope, which is a high performance envelope with triple pane windows, exterior, rigid insulation, WRB. We also did what Peter can't do, I guess, in Michigan. We have a master meter. Why spend all the time, all the space and money on 26 meters when the utility bills are going to be about $15 a month? Why not have a master meter, charge tenants a flat fee? They love it, simplifies everything. Remind tenants the kind of building that they're living in. So these incentivize and educate them. These panels have LED lights that are tied into the energy monitoring system. So and then they're tied into each individual apartment, but nobody knows which panel belongs to which apartment. So if you're living within your energy budget, it'll glow green. It'll glow red if you're really devouring too much, and yellow if it's somewhere in between. But again, to stick at below $170 a square foot in 2017, this is code-built construction. How do you do that? Well, you bring solar into the financial picture as well, the revenue side of things. And this is a case where we really pushed the element of solar beyond just generating power. This is a 25-unit apartment building we just completed at $180 a square foot, just north of the last one. And the integration of solar here is more than just generating power. It has multiple functions. It's floating away from the building by about 24 inches. And so it does the all-important shading of this building in the summertime because of that. So it's a shading device. It's a visual privacy device. It's also generating all the power for the building. It also creates a really wonderfully shaded but totally livable green roof where people can grow their own vegetables. And at the moment, this past year, it generated 26,000 kWh more than the building needed. So what does that mean? That means that utilities can start to become revenue generation line items in your budget. So that's what I mean when I say integrate. Decentralize. We're questioning the whole centralization of mechanical and hot water systems. This is a heat pump and ERV combined, where the condenser is built into the unit. So there are no condensers and line sets on the roof. It fits nicely into the cabinetry. We're questioning the whole centralization of hot water. This was our original centralized hot water air source heat pumps on the roof. Sandin is the name of the company. Huge heat loss from the recirculation loops, lots of piping. We took our cues from the sewer pipes in the building, because by code, the premise is you've got a straight shot, short horizontal runs for venting reasons. So we did the same thing. We decentralized the hot water with stacking them below where all of the fixtures are in the basement with very short horizontal runs. And then our recirc loop is actually inside our supply line. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what we're doing. And so here's the supply line, the recirc loop is inside it. So why? Because we cut the piping in half, we cut the insulation in half, we cut the cost in half, and we cut the heat loss of that system in half. And there's typical heat pump water heaters. And that's all I have for right now.
Hey, thanks, Tim. And we're gonna finish here with Matt Hollander, and again, just looking at some of his biggest challenges with his creamery project, and what he did to overcome those.
So the biggest challenge, in my opinion, every single time we do a development is finding the highest and best use for the site. And part of that question involves the community, because if we're developing something, we want to do it with the community. We don't want to do it to the community. And so on the creamery, we were actually lucky when it came to this, because the creamery is part of a long-term, multi-year redevelopment.
Brett, we lost the sound.
And Bison Associates, the architect we worked with, to hold a series of community charrettes where the neighborhood actually was able to come together and decide what they wanted to see on this site, which was a brownfield site. So we started with a very messy, sort of malignant building that was an old industrial building. It had originally been a brewery, and then for the longest time it was a creamery. We're not very creative when it comes to names, so that's why we named the project Creamery. And then it had been a truck wash and multiple different things. There'd been a meth lab in there at one point. So it was a messy site, and the land bank demolished the existing building, and then it sat with a little meditation garden and a bunch of native plantings for several years before we came along. And so they had this kind of development in a box already prepared for us that we knew was supported by the community. And so the usual issues that we run into, particularly with affordable housing, in terms of the people coming out of the woodwork and saying, not in my backyard, and no, we don't want this, we didn't experience any of that. We had total support from the neighborhood from day one, and that helped us all along the line in terms of dealing with foundations that we worked with, dealing with our lenders. Everybody was just sort of pointed in the same direction. So that was, I think, the biggest challenge, but on this particular project, it ended up being one of the easiest things to solve.
All right. Thanks, Matt. So we're gonna get into another question here for the group. And these are about contractors, and we kind of want to get a sense for what strategies you use to pick the contractors and your team that you're going to work with. It's obviously very important that you have a team on board to achieve these kind of goals, and we know many times that not having the right team can get in the way. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to you first here, Peter, and hopefully everyone can see my screen with your slide on it. Yeah, do take that away.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. The simple response to this is engage, just getting involved, talking to people. So that talking to contractors about their experience, and it's not always that they have done this, or but that they have a desire to, that they want to learn, that they want to try to do the next best thing, that they have a good relationship with designers, whether that's architects or mechanical, electrical engineers and such, and also with their suppliers and the manufacturers. Are they interested in the next things that are coming out from equipment manufacturers? And then with that, building a team. As a contractor, you have to be careful about making sure that you have multiple contractors available for each trade. And you have to be careful about price, obviously. But I think that having a team, having people that have worked together on multiple projects trumps all of that. That you've got somebody that once you've gone through that experience with them on a project and you've really done everything you can to really get the details worked out, really building a project together, you don't want to lose that. Taking that team over to the next project and how do we do it better on the next one. The next one is talking to manufacturers and suppliers, trying to find out from them what are things that they have coming up, or maybe there are solutions that work better, or maybe creating some new ideas like running your return water line right inside the supply line. My gosh, what a fantastic idea. So there's inventing new things like that. And then the final one is just asking stupid questions. Within each individual area of a project, there are going to be experts that, whether it's a manufacturer, a designer, or a contractor, that are going to know more about it. And that has been always my approach, of just asking them stupid questions to get them to talk, get them to explain why do they do things a certain way? What is it that makes something work or makes something not work? And that can be revealing in a number of different ways. One, you certainly learn new things, and also you can learn what somebody's attitude is about whether they really know this stuff, or they're really passionate about it, or not.
Thank you, Peter. And Kamina, tell us a little bit more about, at least so far on the design stage, what your experience is in selecting teams to make this happen.
Yeah, we have not yet identified a contractor. I'll say, given the financing that we are utilizing, or pursuing, we are required to bid the project to at least 3 contractors. So we will be pursuing contractors that bring experience working, of course, on high-rise developments in downtown Chicago, as well as working on developments that have this level of sustainable features. On the design side, we were intentional in securing local diverse talent. Our 50 plus years of experience have really taught us that well-designed buildings and spaces contribute to improving the lives of residents and the residents we serve, and have a positive influence on the communities surrounding our buildings. Therefore, we sought out a collaboration with Studio Gang. Studio Gang is known for its exceptional mixed-use high-rise design, as well as sustainability, community, and equity. And we felt that combining TCB's mission and Studio Gang's focus on helping community-based organizations, as well as promoting social justice, while also leading some successful buildings in Chicago, would be a well-combined partnership at the C40 site. So we were fortunate and excited to have Studio Gang on the team, leading the design with other talented members that include Design Bridge. They're a local architect firm that specializes in delivering well-designed low-income housing tax credit developments. And then Jack, they're a local boutique firm that brings experience in designing health clinics. Since we will have a health clinic on site, also a contributing component to the health and well-being of the residents in the building. And then DBHMS, as I mentioned, Sachin and Tyler are out in the audience. They have experience working with TCB and working with us as the MEP, as well as a sustainability consultant on some of our previous developments that have been successfully built and are in operation. So, we like Peter said, we don't want to always reinvent the wheel. And when we can bring in and leverage relationships that we've had on prior projects, it really makes for a smoother, you sort of take lessons learned from your prior experiences and bring them into new projects. And then DBHMS, of course, also has experience working with Studio Gang. We definitely brought a robust team together, both on the design side, and I also note that because of the complexity of the bottom 2 floors and the need to think through the commercial use, we also upfront brought in operators. We brought our operators on to work with the design team on what those commercial spaces should look like. And we already have on the team Rush, who will be the health clinic operator. Center for Neighborhood Technology to program the neighborhood space, the neighborhood meeting, event, and collaboration space. And we also brought in a food hall operator to help guide the design and programming of the development. And we're making some bold commitments when it comes to waste management on the food hall piece. And we wanted to have a food hall operator at the table with some of the bold decisions that we were making to ensure that they can operate with tenants in a way that meets the goals of the project. So yeah, that's our team to date, and we certainly are looking to expand the team as needed.
All right. Well, good luck in that contractor search. I know, I know that's tough right now, but I know you'll find the best one for the project. Tim, I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, sure. So I don't really have a slide for this. I'll just be brief. So there are two ways that we work. I mentioned one of them. When we do our own development projects, we're the architect, the developer, and the builder. And so we've just got this integrated team that knows how to do this stuff. When we are working for clients, because our architecture firm designs lots of affordable housing and market rate housing, we have a slightly different attitude, because the obvious thought would be that you have to make everybody on the team understand how unique this project is and how different it is from all other buildings. And what we have found when we do that is that we get budgets that are also very different and unique. So what we try to do is actually communicate with our team about how standard it is. We are from day one talking to the framers, to the foundation guys, to the electricians, to the mechanical guys. We try to design this building to be as simple as humanly possible, so that they don't even necessarily need to know that it's a passive house building. So what we do is what some people have called stealth passive house, which is to just build it in to your design details, not just with the building, but the mechanical systems. And if people are interested, we'll talk about it. But if not, we don't want to make it special, because making things special makes them, people start padding their line items in their budgets, because how unique this is and how potentially dangerous it could be.
I really appreciate that idea of stealth or sneaky passive house. I'm not going to forget that one. Thanks, Tim. I'm going to turn it over to Matt Hollander now to quick answer this question on his contractors.
So we started with our architect. Our architect actually approached us about doing the project because they had been part of this community charrette process. They had already done a bunch of work on site plan and sort of conceptual design. And so we knew that we were going to be working with Bison Associates from day one. And after we selected Bison Associates, we ran an RFP for a construction manager. And all of that was after we decided what our green building goals were. So we sort of started with the architect and started with the goal of LEED Platinum. And we also knew that we were going to try and go as much electric as we possibly could, along with the LEED Platinum certification. And so when we selected a contractor, they already knew what they were in for. And once we selected Frederick Construction, which is a contractor based out of Vicksburg, Michigan, we just moved forward. We knew that we were targeting platinum. We knew that we were targeting as close to net zero ready as we could. And that was really helpful throughout the process. Every time we approached a funder, that was part of what we told them we were doing. And it just sort of carried through the whole project. So we followed an integrated process from day one. We selected our green consultant early enough in the process that they were around throughout all of schematic design and design development. And then by the time we got to construction documents, we had to go through some value engineering, but we knew exactly what we weren't able to throw out. So we didn't end up with a baby and bathwater situation in terms of taking off some of our green building goals, reducing the LEED Platinum down to gold or silver or whatever. We knew that those were sacred elements of the project, and everybody agreed to that early enough that we had to find different ways to reduce costs when we ran into budget issues. And so we worked through that, and we, haven't received the certification as of today, but it looks like we are going to hit platinum, and we were able to accomplish all the goals that we set.
All right. Peter, I'm going to turn it back over to you, kicking off the next set of questions. With what were the lessons learned? What would you do a little bit differently? And so I'm going to go ahead and get your initial slide up here, and then, yeah, take it away.
Okay. So I'm responding to this from Bradford Station. This project that we just finished is earlier this year. So there were some things that were very specific to that project, but I think apply, in general. The first one was handling kitchen exhaust venting. It seemed like this was one that we struggled with the meeting the code requirements, meeting the expectations of our local mechanical inspector in the city here. It's an aesthetic issue with how many vents and such do you have in the exterior of the building. It's a cost issue, it's an energy efficiency issue, and also user comfort. So yeah, that's one that we're working through. Likely we will do a little differently on our next project. Second one is more of an operational thing. It's connection to local waste haulers for ongoing operations, including ways of handling recycling and food waste. We did do composting on this project, and I'll be really curious to see how well that worked. So far, we're getting pretty good compliance. I think people are using it. We decided not to use garbage disposals with the idea of trying to encourage people to compost all of their food waste, but also trying to work with the city and how are they handling trash? Kent County, where we are, has a whole initiative on reimagining trash and trying to turn trash into a valuable commodity as opposed to just trash. And the last one was understanding the importance of access to outdoor space for tenants. We really we were on a fairly tight site. We didn't have a lot of room. Felt like we're in a urban environment. There's lots of parks that are within walking distance, and we did all of those calculations and such. But I was at the building last week and talking to one of the tenants, and we're putting a coffee shop in the first floor, and he was really asking, "Oh boy, are we going to be able to have outdoor seating?" And that was he loves the space, he's happy to live there, but that was an amenity that he was looking for, and it'll be interesting to see going forward. There's whether that's incorporating individual decks and patios for each unit, or doing more of a community space that's up on a rooftop, or if there are availabilities and immediately around the site that are either private or communal, but they're communal for just that apartment complex, so that there's easy access throughout the year, but in the spring through fall, that people have an easy way to get outside and enjoy the outdoors. Thank you.
Peter, and I'll turn it over to you, Kamina, on some of the, at least in the design stage, your lessons learned, and thanks.
Yeah, through some of our design analysis, we did identify two areas of lesson learned, one timber versus concrete and another radiant versus VRF. And, through our design analysis, we did originally consider and design for timber, but identified an alternate low carbon concrete, which I'd mentioned earlier, which ended up being more economical and as well has a similar embodied carbon to the hybrid steel structure we were originally considering. Developing, testing, and implementing this very low carbon mix provides an example for how other developments in Chicago market can offer a way to produce buildings with embodied carbon well below industry standards. And I'll say also, given the volatility in the market around wood costs, had we selected timber, this item might have been under the challenges section instead. And then the second lesson learned around radiant versus VRF through sort of, again, design analysis. We had initially expected that a radiant heating and cooling system would be the most efficient and effective option for the project, given the height of the building and the limited area available on the site. A geothermal well field was not a good solution for the project, and the necessary size of the geothermal field to provide enough heating and cooling for the building exceeded the area available on site and would require supplemental systems. And any all electric solution to hot water production is not efficient at the extreme low temperatures of the Chicago winter. So our analysis ended up showing that the VRF performed as well, or even in some cases better than the radiant system, and ended up being, once we sort of price it out, a much more economical price. So we end up ultimately going the VRF route over the radiant route.
Awesome. I think I'm glad you brought up embodied energy. I think you should be the one wearing this one. Tim, I'll pass it off to you now.
Sure. I just kind of collected a bunch of things I mentioned already, but the vertical integration, I think, is critical to what we've learned about how to do this cost effectively. I can't emphasize enough the keeping everything simple at every single solitary level. Prefabrication, as I've mentioned, is like if we're building buildings for the 21st century, we should be rethinking how we've been building buildings for the past couple of hundred years, because there's not a ton of difference between them. Big fan of, I haven't put gas in a building in 15 years. I think it's totally doable and totally cost effective. You just have to be constantly innovating, always looking out for new products. This idea of ventilation, heating, and cooling on some of our earlier projects were separated. We're centralized, separated VRF system with a centralized ventilation system. And for the scale of buildings that we're working on, we've discovered that they're too complex, they're too expensive, and you've got two totally separate mechanical systems: ventilation, heating and cooling, and dehumidification. It just that drives up costs. So I'm always looking for what the Germans and the Austrians have had for 20 years. It's called a magic box, which is about the size of a refrigerator, and it does hot water, heating, cooling, dehumidification, and ventilation. And it sits in, and it's a beautiful piece of equipment, and it sits in every apartment and does everything you need in one combination unit. And then just a big fan of learning to treat PV combined with passive house. It doesn't make as much sense if you're not building a passive house envelope as part of your revenue stream, as part of your capital stack and your development budgets. So
thank you, Tim, and I'm glad you brought up the magic box concept, and we're going to be having a further session on that in the future here. So stay tuned for that. Really cool concepts there. But the low-income housing tax credit projects definitely are different ways to approach this. So Matt is going to tell us a little bit about his lessons learned on his specific project from that here in Michigan.
So, before I talk about lessons learned, I want to describe the project a little bit. We created a mixed-use building, and it's a roughly 60,000 square foot building. It's a long site with a gentle slope, and it comes to an intersection that is not a right angle. It actually sort of comes out at a point. which is what you're seeing at the in the top right photograph here. So that's the main entrance to the building. We're still under construction in this photograph. We've been open since mid-February. So this is a dated photo, but it does show the zip sheathing that we used. It's the green sheathing down at the other end of the building here. You can see it on some of the middle portions as well. We did continuous insulation on the entire building envelope and really focused a lot on exterior air sealing and compartmentalization between the different residential units. We didn't go as hard on R value and chose instead to focus on sealing it up. So what you see on the top left, we have a flat roof. That's actually our roof deck. And that's a space that's available to all the residents. In this photograph, one of our commercial tenants is actually teaching a yoga class on the roof. Joy Morris is her name. She's going to be opening a studio in the commercial space on the ground floor of the building. On the bottom left, you can see the PV array that we installed. So one of the things that we did on the project is we set a budget for PV on day one. And so from our first trade payment breakdown, our first construction budget, we knew that we were going to spend about $75,000 on photovoltaics. And we factored that into our entire capital stack. So we knew what the projections were for the solar energy credits. We knew that was what we had to work with. And based on just sort of back of the envelope calculations at the time, we figured we'd be able to install it for about $2 a watt. This construction project started in 2019, and solar prices were, fluctuating at that point. We probably could have gone a little bit lower, but we used, I think these are Canadian panels, and we used some North American inverters and things like that. You can see behind the panels, those are Carrier mini split heating and cooling systems. So that's kind of the heart of the net zero ready aspect of the creamery. The PV array mostly is powering the shared building systems, but we designed it so that we were only putting in about half of our capacity in solar panels at this stage. This is a roughly 36 kilowatt array, and we have room on the roof. What we calculated is we have room on the roof for about 75 kilowatts. And so when we constructed the building, we put in conductors from the roof down to the meter bank at the ground level that were sized appropriately for the full capacity we had. So we have conductors and chases and feeds in place already to double the size of the PV system. And then on the bottom right, you can see that we have a green roof, which was not done for any sort of energy reasons, but we try to incorporate biophilic design into this as much as possible. And that's next to the roof deck. You can see a little bit of it poking out in the yoga photograph. And the way the building is put together is we have 48 residential units. They're all 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, generously sized. So our units start at about 675 square feet, go up to about 1,200 square feet. And it's a mixture of low-income housing and what we call workforce housing. So we have income restrictions that range from 30 to 80% of area median income. And then we have a certain number of units that are intended for people right at area median income, 100% of Kalamazoo's AMI. The units are modern. You can see poking out of the closet in the top left photograph, everybody has their own washer and dryer. Those are Energy Star. The dryers are heat pump units, so we don't have any building penetrations for the venting. We have over the kitchen range, you can see there's a vent in the ceiling that goes to our dedicated outdoor air system, which has a heat recovery wheel. And so we're doing energy recovery throughout the entire building in conjunction with providing fresh air at all times. And we still have fully ducted range hoods and bathroom fans. All of the appliances are Energy Star. Between the top left and right photo, you can see the only difference between what we're calling workforce housing units on this project and low-income housing units is the workforce units have stainless appliances. They're the same GE Energy Star appliances that we have everywhere else. You have white colored ones in the low-income units, and then there's quartz countertops on the workforce units and laminate countertops on the low-income. So otherwise, everything's the same. And each unit is very tightly compartmentalized from all the other units. One of the only issues that we ran into in terms of the green construction aspects of the project is air sealing between the ducts and the interstitial space within the units. So we had really tight compartmentalization unit to unit, but we had to do some additional air sealing after occupancy to make sure that the ductwork was sealed to the drywall and that we weren't getting air infiltration into the wall cavities. So one of the big lessons that we learned here is that we need to be much more specific on our air sealing details with the general contractor as well as the subcontractors. And we need to be more vigilant in terms of when our green building consultants are on site doing inspections. And even if we have to pay more for inspections that don't necessarily tie to some sort of requirement in LEED or whatever other green building certification we're using, we want them on site more, not less. And we want them to be having regular interactions with the subcontractors who are actually doing the work, because it's much easier to deal with this stuff while you're still under construction than it is after occupancy. One of the biggest lessons that we learned here, and I'll keep going here a little bit. This is the commercial space on the ground floor. One of the biggest lessons we learned is having diversity of funding is actually a major bonus when it comes to trying to go for deep green construction like net zero ready. In this case, we were combining affordable housing with two other uses, the commercial that I just sort of glossed over because it's a minor portion of the building, and this YWCA Children's Center. So we worked with YWCA Kalamazoo to establish what they call the YWCA Edison Children's Center. It's in the Edison neighborhood in Kalamazoo. That's where that name comes from. And this is a 7,800 square foot early childhood learning center, which has first, second, and third shift childcare, as well as 24-hour emergency drop-in services. So this is a big deal. This is the first childcare center like this that has been built in Michigan. And we worked with YWCA at various levels during the financing of the project. So they did a major capital campaign. And we actually worked with social impact investors who provided a form of financing to the project on the side of the residential. And when we talked to those funders, one of the first things that we brought up was that we were going for LEED Platinum. And so from day one, those foundations were excited that we were going for LEED Platinum. And whenever somebody along the line came to us and said, well, this is really expensive construction, which it actually wasn't expensive construction. I'll get to that later. But can't we cut costs by going with LEED Silver or some other thing that's going to be less expensive? And it gave us cover to just say no. If we do that, we could potentially lose these foundation investments that we've already negotiated, and that's non-negotiable. It's just part of the project. And we were able to do that a couple times effectively, and it totally diffused any sort of conversation about reducing our building performance goals. So that was a big lesson learned. And these are just some interior shots of the childcare center because this is a really special part of the project. The children's center and the commercial space on this project are not, they were not constructed the exact same way as the residential. The residential is where we're pursuing the LEED certification, and that's where we have all electric heating and cooling. There are high efficiency gas furnaces, rooftop units associated with the YWCA space as well as the commercial space, because those just that wasn't a goal from the beginning on the project. We wanted to make sure that the residential was net zero ready. So I don't want to leave anybody here thinking that we did the entire 60,000 square feet, but we did 87% of that is net zero ready. So.
All right. And then our final question, and let's keep it brief to just, and Matt really, I think, talked a little bit about financials. So thank you, Matt, for, I'm sorry he couldn't make it today, but I'll hand it over to you, Peter. And then we're gonna dive into some audience questions. So just tell us a little bit about, some of your financial structures and how you use that to help, help make these kinds of projects happen.
Sure. So the first one is support from our state and local government. That's a big part of being involved in the community, right? So some specific things there from the city of Grand Rapids, property tax savings, huge help when getting a project. Once you're operating and up and going, and you're into that annual operating expenses, having a property tax savings is super helpful. Tax increment financing, we haven't always used this in our project, but certainly a big part of urban redevelopment and brownfield expenses that can be turned into get the funding up front, reduce your capital needs at the beginning of a project. MEDC has provided grants and loans on a number of our projects, and they really strongly support mixed use developments, trying to encourage higher density, getting residential into our cities, and also encouraging retail space on the first floor. And then on depending on the building, historic tax credits can play a big role. Using other people's money. A number of our projects, we partner with people that have existing land or a building that they know there's value to, but in of itself isn't doing anything for them. So we can bring them into a project. So instead of owning 100% of a piece of property or a building that isn't making any money for them, they'll own some percentage of a much larger development that cash flows. And certainly caution with that of making sure that the goals and expectations are clearly defined, where as we started in the beginning of our triple bottom line philosophy, and I think everybody on the call having, really laser focus on sustainable design, we want to look to make sure that our partners have a similar mindset. And then finally is just using our own money. And that's can be a challenge with real estate projects because they're long-term investments. As a builder and a developer, the builder I say is my W-2 wages, and the building and the ownership of the building, the development is my retirement income. So it's you have to be cautious of how much of your own money you use to get a project launched.
Thanks, Peter. I'll hand it off to you, Camina. Tell us a little bit about your financial resources for these projects.
Okay, yeah, we are using a unique multi-layered financial structure, which does include the usage of both 4% and 9% low-income housing tax credits. The 4% is not as competitive as the 9%, and now we're looking at $102 million development. So we are pursuing 9%, which is a highly competitive resource, but then layering it with 4% credits as well. And then you see in our capital stack also includes multiple soft debt options. And as Peter mentioned as well, we certainly are pursuing local resources as well from the city. And the city has always been a great partner in all the work that we do. And we are pursuing city soft funding, as well as the land as city owned and would be donated to the project. And the donation of that land actually generates state credits that are then contributed to the project in the form of a loan. So another great resource for us to use in this particular project. And then ComEd, the local energy company, offers an affordable housing energy efficiency grant. And we've been successful in pursuing those funds on other projects, and have been in contact with ComEd on this particular project and utilizing that grant resource on this particular project as well, especially given that much of what they require in order to pursue the grant, we're already doing that in the project anyway. So the project nicely aligns with the ComEd energy grant goals. And then lastly, we are able to layer in perm debt. On our projects, we tend to always carry perm debt, but on this particular one, we are able to carry a reasonable amount of debt. Our organization, TCB, we are putting our corporate offices in the project, and we will be paying market rent. And this will help leverage additional debt for the development of the entire building. So now that's sort of a recap on our sources that we are utilizing for the development of this project.
Thank you, Kamina. And Tim, I'll pass it off to you to talk about onion plants and your financial opportunities for these kinds of projects.
Sure. Actually, I'm going to take a slightly different tact here because the projects that I showed you are our own market rate development projects, and they are traditional debt lending and equity. We typically own the property outright. We buy low and we hold for a long time. And so the equity in the land usually becomes our equity. But I don't want to talk about the market rate stuff. I want to talk about the low-income housing tax credits, because as architects, we've done a ton of affordable housing. And we started this initiative back in 2014 after we completed the first certified passive house project in Pennsylvania, which was this project, Belfield Townhouses, which is just 3 townhomes, but for formerly homeless families, and it was funded through tax credits. And so again, it was our first passive house project, built it in our factory, had the PV array on the roof to generate what the building needed. And we built it at $129 a square foot. So we leveraged this as an opportunity to maybe get a much larger movement going, because it's one thing to build your own individual project and get people excited, but how do you move the industry forward? So we dug in and learned a lot about low-income housing tax credits. A group of us went to the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, showed them this project and said, why can't everybody do this? If we can do this for the first time, why can't everybody do this? And so we literally just boldly requested that they make all affordable housing net zero capable by 2030. And we asked them to use passive house as the tool, but we didn't quite know how to do it. And that's when they told us about the QAP, which I'm sure many of you know all about. This is actually the process by which it's a point-based system, as Kamina said, extremely competitive. And we didn't realize that the competitive nature of the QAP was the secret sauce for this initiative to actually work. So what they did was they put 10 extra points in for developers to take on passive house. And they thought maybe a couple of people would give it a shot. Well, more than a couple of people gave it a shot. 38% of the projects that applied as passive house projects. And they funded 7 multifamily passive house projects in the first year. And here are the costs of all those projects compared. The yellow and orange are the passive house, the white are the code-built buildings. And we compared the cost of all of these projects.
Did we lose Tim, or is that on my end?
Oh, I don't know. Did you lose me?
I can still hear Tim.
No, I can still hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let me just keep going because it's going to get hot here. Here are the costs. And so for a passive house building that uses 75% less energy than a code-built building, they came in at 2.5% more on average. And the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency said, you can do that within your contingency. Let's keep going. So they got built, all 7 got built, and they got built on budget and on time within their contingencies. So they went to the second year, 10, they funded 10 multifamily passive house projects. Same thing happened, but it slightly shifted. Here's all the costs. It flipped. The passive house projects are starting to come in on par or slightly below the code-built projects. And we could talk about why that is. And here they all are. These are all built now. And then year 3 and 4, 2017 and 18, they funded another 8 multifamily projects, and the exact same thing happened. So this isn't about some boutique design build developer like us trying to demonstrate it. This is everyday developers, architects, and builders building at cost parity to code built buildings. And so we said, what the heck, why not take it across the country? And we just asked so far 40 states housing finance agencies to date if they could do something similar, get Passive House into their QAPs. 17 states so far have done that to one degree or another. Here they are. Projects are happening like crazy all over the place, specifically Massachusetts. There's a ton of projects, affordable housing projects built to the Passive House standard coming up. And then even the ones that don't have it in their QAPs, they're on their way because these buildings are being built there anyway, because it makes sense in Vermont, in Minnesota, in Missouri, in Oregon, in all over the place in Maine. And so I wanted to leave that as an important way to talk about financing, because I think one of the critical misnomers that needs to be dispelled is that these things have to be more costly, and they have to have this completely unique financial structure in order to make them work, and they don't.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tim, Kamina, and Peter. We've got a lot of questions rolling in. We've got time for questions. Before we get to those questions, real quick, just a huge thanks to our sponsors this year. This is our final session for this year. That's been 3 sessions altogether. You can check out the other remaining. And again, a huge thanks to our planning partners who are behind the scenes, have been putting these on for 3 years now. Big thanks to them. And just real quick, as we were talking financing, I want to say both a congratulations to the state of Michigan and Illinois. I know many of you are tuning in from Michigan and Illinois, and then also sort of a heads of you who are doing tax credits in these states, or in the future, you can assume states will look to, especially Michigan, who I think continues to receive the highest green QAP grade out of all the states. We'll be looking to them for advice. And so here's the direction we're headed, everybody. Net zero is getting built into our QAPs. Illinois just sort of aligned theirs to some extent with Michigan's. We're talking about LEED Zero, National Green Building Standard, which for whatever reason wasn't adopted in Illinois, or Enterprise Green Communities Path to Zero. So the thing to know about these is that LEED and NGBS allow you to buy carbon offsets to achieve these goals, or renewable energy credits. NGBS, from what I understand, will require 2 years worth. LEED will be 1. And then Enterprise is going to require you achieve the Department of Energy's Zero Energy Ready program or Passive House. And so a lot of these states are also starting to, as Tim mentioned, adopt Passive House. So you want to make friends with the Passive House consultant if you haven't yet, because that is the direction we're heading into. And it depends on which version of Passive House. Some are US only, some are international, some are both. The thing to know about RECs is from what we can tell, if you want to use renewable energy credits to meet these zero energy goals, no judgment being passed if that's what you're doing, I'm just stating it. $100 per unit per year is what we're looking at on average. So that means that's sort of a basic efficient unit hitting the green standard. So if you can be more energy efficient, you can invest less in a REC, which in my opinion, what does a REC really give you but a piece of paper? And so anyway, the more efficient you can be, or going towards Passive House or having on-site solar, the less RECs you're going to have to buy. But that's kind of the number we came up with based on our own internal evaluation for when you go to achieve these programs. So with that, I want to get into the short time we have left for questions. One of so for those of you who dropped questions in the chat, I probably won't ever see them. So make sure you migrate them over to the Q&A, and we'll try to get from there. Let's talk a little bit about, and some of you went down into details here, but maybe I'll start with you, Peter. The first question was about air sealing the exterior envelope. Just any kind of suggestions or recommendations you can give for those who want to get that air loss down as part of their energy efficiency goals.
Yeah, we did I think this addresses thermal envelope in a couple of different ways. We did the zip panel system, so exterior insulation over the framing, and it worked well. We had no issues at all on our blower door test. They came out better than any other project we'd ever done, and so a little bit of an issue when we built it. We had that building framed and had all of the panels up, just taping it when COVID shut us down. So the building sat for several months, and then we were concerned about it. So we were doing some tests just because the tape didn't seem to stick all that well after being exposed. So we did a bunch of tests just once we could get out on the site again, just spraying the outside of the building with water and looking for leaks on the inside. And found some, went back and retaped a bunch of areas, panel to panel, and also panel to window before we put the siding on, or the brick, we had brick and metal siding. And then since it's been great.
Kamina, I know you're in the design stage, but any kind of design strategies you're using for exterior or air sealing at all?
Yeah, I was going to actually pass that one to Sachin, who is on, who can help answer that if he's able to come off mute.
I don't think we got Sachin, unfortunately, elevated to panelist, but Sachin, we'd love for you to chime into the comment section, and I'll look for it there. And I'll see if I, in the meantime, can get you off of mute. And I'll kick it over to Tim real quick to talk. I know you've showed us some ACH numbers, which look fantastic, but can you just dive into it a little bit more?
Yeah, let me just say something about, so Kamina's project is going to require a very different strategy for air sealing. And what I would suggest is that people check out the passive house buildings that have been, they're exploding in New York City right now. There are lots of strategies that have been analyzed for the past 10 years about the most cost-effective, best way of doing it. And so I would ask people to go to 475, for instance, or the Passive House Accelerator, and you'll see a bunch of these projects. When it comes to our projects, we stay in the wood construction. And so we're 4 stories most of the time. For clients, we go above that, but our projects are very intentionally 4 stories and below because we want to stick with cost-effective wood construction. And as I mentioned, the secret to blower door test and air tightness is working with a panelized strategy. And so, we bought our panels from a company called Blueprint Robotics in Kansas City. And like I said, they are a 2x6 stud wall with kind of a SIP attached to the outside. It's got an air barrier of OSB, various thicknesses of EPS, and then zip panel as the WRB. But then the windows and doors are actually installed in the factory. And so, along the same lines as what I said before about trying not to make this special, we went to our framers and we said, hey, if we didn't tell them it was Passive House, we said, hey, if you framed this building from stick, give me a cost. And they gave us a cost, build the wall, put the air barrier on, put the insulation on, put the WRB on, install all the windows. This is like 3 times around the building, right? So they gave us a cost. And I said, okay, what if you didn't need any of that? You didn't need scaffolding, you didn't need any of it, and it came as a panel. Now give me a cost. And so with a high performance panel that was essentially guaranteed to be airtight within the panel itself, we got a lower cost to frame the building. And then the joints between those frames, we put a bead of a particular sealant from a company called Proseco right at the air barrier, at the horizontal and vertical lines of the air barrier, so that when they came together, they were sealed. And then we did, Peter, I know what you mean about the tape, about the zip tape. We're not big fans of it either for exactly that. So we use their liquid flash. We use their, I'm sure you did the same. But that's on the outside, and that's the weather resistant barrier. That's kind of a backup to the main air barrier, which is the OSB on the sheathing. And so because we've been building the buildings this way, we haven't had to rely on untrained framers building our buildings. Our buildings have been airtight since the day they get built. Like the roof gets put on, windows are in. We usually get them done just before the winter. And what's awesome is the insulation is half the insulation is already on it. The triple pane windows are already in it. So they need very little heat to keep the construction site warm, and they're airtight and weather sealed. So again, big fan of prefabrication.
Thank you, Tim. Sachin, you should be on with us now. Can you briefly tell us a little bit about? some of your-
Yes, absolutely. So I'm happy to join. And I think Tim and Peter have kind of summarized the air sealing very well. So I'm going to
Yeah.
keep my comments short. I think the trick with air leakage is you have different trades interfacing with different materials, and that's where trouble happens. Trouble never really happens when you have the same material going over. So, and that's a quality control issue in the field. So if you can eliminate that process and go to a panelized system, that's what we're looking at. You kind of eliminate. You have fewer of those interfaces between dissimilar materials, and that's the best strategy to kind of reducing air leakage. Otherwise, you have to stand there and watch everybody, because when the guy who's taping is there, the guy who did the insulation isn't there, and they're not waiting for each other and talking to each other. So that's just how construction happens. And if we can eliminate that, you've got a recipe for success.
Thank you, Sachin. There's some questions coming in about how we achieve these challenges. We've got millions, especially of existing housing, but we've got a lot of existing buildings out there that we need to make net zero immediately, starting yesterday. Peter, I think you're sitting in one that's going zero carbon, right? Tell us a little bit about what's important. How do we do that?
Yeah, so the building I'm in, it's a 3-story brick structure. Overall, a great building. The masonry is in really good shape. Some issues with clay tile behind a face brick, but that we're configuring now for apartment use. One, going all electric, and that just for our use for apartments and for retail is just not that big a deal. I'm really hoping we get a tenant that does an all electric restaurant and kitchen. Again, just to show it can be done, and still being concerned about the thermal envelope, being cautious on the inside about sealing everything, insulating it, being cautious about our selection of windows and sliders. We are putting decks on this building again for that outdoor. Let's see, other than that, it isn't any different. When we look at back to the financial question, we look at the capital stack of being able to buy an existing building we're getting the land, we're getting the structure. We had to put a new roof on. We spent a little extra money to just to get the building sealed up and such. But there's still such a savings because so much of that existing structure can be reused that we don't have to buy new. We're getting it at 1920s prices, right? So it works. I love getting in and redoing an old buildings.
Thank you, Peter. Kamina, maybe Sachin, what have you looked at repairing existing buildings to this kind of level? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, TCB, we have nearly 2,000 units throughout Chicagoland, and at least a portion, I won't say half, but at least a third of our units are either at their 15-year low-income housing tax credit compliance period, or are either at or soon to be at their 15-year compliance period. And we are looking to renovate those particular buildings and those sites. And like Peter said, there a lot of our buildings as well are solid, strong brick buildings, and it's really about addressing the energy efficiency in the building. And so when we are looking to rehab those buildings, which we are certainly looking to now, and are working on a strategy to renovate those buildings, we are seeking to make those more energy efficient. And in particular, I'll talk about Oakwood Shores. As we renovate, there are a couple of phases out there that are at their 15-year compliance period. And as we look to renovate those, we simultaneously will be looking to add a solar array in addition to the offsite for Assemble Chicago, looking to add solar array that would support the Oakwood Shores renovations out at that site as well. So, it's certainly a need to renovate in a way that really focuses on the future of our buildings and setting them up for success as it relates to energy efficiency from an operational standpoint, but also for the residents.
Yeah, Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I when you're ready to renovate those, we should talk, because one of the next things that we're taking on is exactly this issue. Those of you write these things down if you haven't heard of them. Energy Sprong, Energy GIE Sprong. It's a strategy that was developed in the Netherlands, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, where the premise was this: when you renovate, do a deep energy retrofit, it costs a lot of money to kick people out of the building and then put them back in. So they developed this strategy where they're essentially wrapping the building with a carbon neutral, high performance envelope that includes the mechanical systems in it as much as possible, and creates a net zero energy product. And you can just look them up and see what they've done. The Rocky Mountain Institute has started a program called Realize. You can write that down, Realize, where they are mimicking the exact same program in the United States. They're starting in California, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts. And they've asked us to be what's called a solution provider for them, which is essentially we become kind of the owner's rep, architect, and coordination company that gathers the panelization companies, the GCs and other folks needed to do this, to retrofit. Their goal is to have 1,000 units under construction in the next 3 years in Massachusetts. Of course, their real goal is to retrofit all buildings over the next 20 years in the United States. But we're in the process of proving out this strategy right now with a very similar panel as I've discussed on some of our earlier projects, but instead of foam, we're going more into carbon sink materials and vapor open assemblies like wood fiber. But we're really excited about that. We've got this great project that we're going to start in Boston this year to take that on.
Go ahead, Dave.
I'm just, can you mention the factory out of Kansas that makes these plans? What's the name of it?
Build Smart.
Build Smart. Okay.
Yeah, but you might also want to look at a company in Baltimore. I mean, I hope we're okay throwing these names out here, but because I think we should be sharing whatever new stuff is going on around the country. A company called Blueprint Robotics is one of my favorite in the country right now, because they're panelizing the entire building, not just the envelope, but the floors and the walls. Plus they're including MEP in their scope. So you can imagine one subcontractor that panelizes your entire building, does as much of the MEP in the building as possible, and then puts it all together on site and is responsible for that entire scope. And they come from the passive house world. So they're only interested in doing that. So I'm a big fan. I think we need more and more companies like this out there.
Hey, Larry, do you have any questions for our guest?
No, I just wanted to thank them. I think this was our biggest webinar. I did want to say, though, we are planning to do in 2022, continue this webinar series. We haven't decided whether we're going to do it live, like the webcam, or hybrid, maybe a hybrid situation, some live, some their advantages. So we'll look for us in 2022. I did want to point out October 17th is World Geothermal Day, the first ever. There's a website called World Geothermal Day. And one of the things you can find on it is in Michigan, our Capitol building went geothermal a couple months ago. Fourth state in the country that went geothermal for a Capitol building. I wrote a song, was created into a video, and that's on YouTube and also on the World Geothermal Day website. So you can look for that. But It's been sent all over the country. Somebody said it's going to go viral. I think it's just going to be a warm fever.
Can you give us the first line, Larry?
What's that?
Can you give us the first line?
Oh, all the leaves are down in the Mitten State. Lansing is so cold. Summer's always late. And the issue with the Capitol was the other heating system had lousy ventilation and the humidification, and all the artwork was deteriorating. And they needed a new system to preserve the priceless artwork we have in that. My son did the video, did a wonderful job. When I said all the artwork's turning a whiter shade of pale, he has it all disintegrating, which is a really cool effect. And anyway, thank you to our panelists. I just thought this was terrific and a wide variety of information. And I think we provide a valuable service to people. Obviously, when David Gard first came to me and said, let's do these webinars, I thought it'd be a niche. We'd have 20 or 30 people. And this is our fifth one. We've now reached over 500 people. Had 172, I counted at one time today. So it's more than just a little niche, and it's growing. And I think it's something worth continuing. I hope everyone watching got something out of it. There are video. You can watch the video. You can get all the slides, I'm sure, Brett. But why don't you, before we leave, tell people what to expect from the future?
Thank you for this wonderful education. Very informative.
Yeah. Thanks, Larry. And thanks for reminding everyone that we're going to circle back and take a look at the year and look at 2022 to see what we're doing and whether we're in person or obviously we never know what's going to be happening anymore. We're always on the edge of our seats. So that's life these days. Do you all have some time to stick around? I think there's one really important question I still want to ask if everyone can stick around. Tim, Peter, I don't want to impose. I know I said 1:45, but I see yes, maybe.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Kinda. All right. Well, I'm going to throw this one first at you, Peter, just because, Kamina, you had kind of already started answering it earlier. But obviously, and you got into this question when we asked about the existing housing and existing building. But, net zero operations is getting easier, right? There's less and less excuses to do that. We need to start looking at the embodied energy of what we're doing in our projects. Peter, I know have been thinking through this. We've had conversations about it earlier. What are your thoughts on, embodied energy or construction energy and how to approach that?
What a great question. Brett, I have to say, I don't feel I'm qualified to answer. Just something I need to learn more as a builder. I've got to dig into it more. I just noticed something came out. Shucks, and I'm gonna. Well, there's a meeting tomorrow, I think, on EPDs, and it's something I know basically what they are, but I haven't gone to that step. What I really want to do as a builder, when we're in the planning process and we're going through it, we're putting budgets together to link up EPDs for every single product we use in a project, and that we build a carbon budget at the same time we're building a cost budget. And then set targets so that when we do these swap outs of different materials, and Tim, you touched on this, of getting away from foam insulation, that we've got alternatives. We're not just thinking about first cost of construction or even operational cost of energy, that we're also getting carbon into it. So I can't say that I've got a good process in place now, but it's really come to the focus that this is something that we've got to take the time to do on our projects.
Thanks, Peter. And Tim, I'll kind of hand it off to you if you've got any more to add to that.
Yeah, what I'll say is this, that two things. One, if you guys have a chance to go to the CEUS conference in mid-October in New York, I highly suggest you do, because there's the whole section on embodied carbon. It's becoming much more important and part of the conversation. Why? Because frankly, embodied carbon is about 50% of the issue with buildings. I mean, that's as real as it gets. And I think where we can work, as Kamina mentioned, most and first is concrete and steel. We can reduce concrete embodied carbon by, as she said, 30% just by a slag mixture. That's a baby step. I think we can completely rethink the material itself. It's another reason why CLT and heavy timber is coming back into view, because it's a carbon sink material, but there are challenges there. Foam is a killer on a whole bunch of levels, and there's really bad foam like XPS and polyiso, and there's not so bad foam like EPS. So I find myself, because we're always in the front kind of doing this stuff, there's never the right products out there. Those products come like 5-10 years down the road. So we've had to deal with the products that we have on hand. But I want to focus on concrete, steel, and foam as the next thing to knock down, to actually just get it to a place where the problem is you build over 5 stories and it's non-combustible construction, and you've got very limited opportunities. But it's a really important piece to take on.
Thank you, Tim.
Well,
And then,
Brett, if I can just add on
go
to that,
ahead, yeah.
if you don't mind, I think embodied carbon is also great. The other thing we're starting to look at on projects is converting pretty much everything that relates to the building's operations to carbon, and then looking at a carbon budget. And that would include looking at the impact of water and what is the carbon expended in bringing carbon to the building. Same thing with waste management. For our C40 project, we actually did a full carbon budget, and we're doing that on more projects. And then that's really where we're headed towards, rather than just looking at energy, which is a slice of that whole carbon pie.
Thank you, Sachin. Kamina, did you have, I know you kind of kicked us off with the conversation. Did you have anything more to add to the embodied energy side, or?
No, I think we got it covered with them 3, and Sachin added. So thank you, Sachin.
Awesome. Well, we are at the end of our session here, and I guess just real quick, briefly, where can people go to contact you if they want to learn more about your project? Peter, I'll start with you.
Yeah, boy, I think my information is shared. My email is just my first name, Peter @Bazzani, or check out Bazzani.com. And I love talking about this stuff. I can learn a lot, and happy to share with my experience.
Great. And Kamina?
I will chat my email in to the chat box. If you have any questions, want to reach out, please feel free to contact me. It's first name kamina.brooks@tcbinc.org, but I'll also chat it in.
All right. And Tim?
Yeah, I just did the same thing. I put my email address and website.
Is it onionflats.com?
Yep.
All right. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up. Peter Scornia, Bazzani Building Company, Kamina Brooks, Timothy McDonald, and Matt Hollander, who could not be with us today, but we're thankful for him participating, and our special guests here, Sachin, and our friends over at DBHMS. Always good to see you all out there. And thanks to all of you, our planning partners. Everyone, stay safe, stay well. We know we can use building science. We know we can ventilate to keep ourselves safe. We got to spread that message. We need to get air quality improved in all of our buildings, and then we can get back together in person, get vaccinated, stay well, stay safe. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.